I have a bit of a plan for my next weaving project. So exciting. So here's my next plan. I need to do some calculations and some working out. So this year, this is the only skein of yarn I bought at Woolen was this Billiam yarn and in the Woolen colorway. So this is my souvenir skein. So this was a really interesting idea. So Hide and Hammer Souvenir Skein 2019. Hide and Hammer is the bag maker that I was talking about in my last episode. She makes these beautiful bags. So she did some sponsorship and she made up loads of these beautiful, oh my goodness, sorry. Come on, tiny kitten. Can't be left out. I know, just very noisy with that car alarm, but anyway. So on the back it says, hello and welcome to Woolen 2019. We in Hide and Hammer wish you a fantastic festival, whether you're shopping, attending workshops, catching up with old friends. When you get your hands on the special skein you've been dreaming of, make it a little bit more special with this Hide and Hammer souvenir tag. A perfect memory of what is sure to be the best woolen yet. Share your skeins with the hashtag Souvenir Skein 2019 and Woolen Souvenir Skein. So I was like, I absolutely love these colours, of course. I love the memories that were attached to 2019. And I was thinking about making a shawl out of this skein. So this skein is Billiam Rock, if you can see, Billiam Rock, 100% merino wool. It is 500 meters per 200 grams. Hand wash only, hand dyed yarns. Hand dyed in Hungary, one of a kind. Billiam in Hungary, and they're on Etsy. They're amazing. Gradient, amazing. So 500 meters. I need to calculate out how long a warp I can get out of this one skein. So what I learned from this skein here, from this project here, this is 100% linen. The warp was linen and the weft was linen. So the warp is the long threads along this direction and the weft is across that way, right? Weaving with linen is very, very, it's tricky for a rigid Heddle loom. It'd be better, I'd say, for a bigger counterbalance loom. The threads are incredibly strong, but they're not very flexible. So you need to wet it the whole time. The room has to be very humid for it to be kind of movable. And then when tiny kittens get their little teeth into the warp, it can quite easily. Well, actually, I was really worried about that. She did manage to bite through 3 of the 4 plies and there was only 1 ply holding a warp together at one stage and I was like panicking. So I was being really careful beating down and it was strong enough, it held. I was like, this is amazing. So that was really, really something to be said for a linen warp. But I think I would like to try something a bit easier. So a wool warp and a linen weft. So it'll be 50-50. Well, this is DK weight, I think. 500 meters, 200 grams. So 100 grams is 250 meters. So yeah, DK, kind of a, heavy DK weight. So, or light DK. Anyway, so if you have a thicker warp and a thinner weft, you're going to get a warp face fabric. This is a warp face fabric, but you can see the darker threads going through it a lot more. With this one, I think this will be a lot brighter, even though I'm using the same weft. This skein will actually be a lot brighter because you'll see more of the warp threads and the thinner thread going through. It's going to be an interesting experiment. So pretty. So we'll see. I might, I need to do some calculations to see how long I can get. I need to count across the reed. So, oh my gosh, look at the colours. Ah, that's so funny. So the colours came off on the reed. Funny. I think I'll need to go up a little bit. So this is a 15 dent per inch. So I think I need to go, so this is really good for fingering weight or even lace weight. This is a very fine fingering weight yarn. So for the warp on this one, I'm going to have to probably go to 12, probably 10 or even 7.5, and see where I go from there. Kitten has found a box. Alright, kitten. I don't know what type of fabric I want. If I want a dense fabric, I can use a tighter, like a more holes per inch. And if I want a looser fabric, like a flowy fabric, I can get a less holes per inch. So we'll see. Okay, so I've worked out that in this rigid Heddle loom, I have got 60 holes. So I multiplied that by 2 and I got 120 threads, which are going to be on this. Now I took one off because there's going to be one that is not, it's not exactly double. It's double minus 1 because slot's going to be on the outside. I could have a hanging thread, but I don't want to. So yeah, so it's 119 threads that can go into this rigid Heddle. So I've got 500 meters divided by 119 threads, and that's 4 meters and 20 centimeters, or 420 centimeters of a warp that I can get. So those 20 centimeters are going to be my waste yarn, are going to be the wasted. And so I have measured out on my kitchen floor, my tiles, each one of these tiles is 40 centimeters. So if I divide 420 centimeters by 40 centimeters, I get like 10.5 of the tiles. So I counted out, I'm going to do, I count out the tiles as opposed to getting down because I can't get down. So that's how I've managed to do a little bit of maths to figure out how much yardage I can get out of this ball. And we're gonna see if I'm right. I'm often not, so we'll see. I've got a, if you can see, there's a chair just there, just here, and there's a peg attached to the top of the chair. There's a peg just here. You may or may not be able to see it, but I'll show you a time lapse a little bit closer to the time. So we'll see how far I can go with the warping. I do need to walk around, so hopefully it's going to be fairly okay. I'm going to try not to lean over too much, just a little bit worried about that. But yeah. So I'm going to put the camera just here. Maybe not, you can see all my mess. Well, that's not too messy. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see what's going on. All right, and we'll go do a time lapse. Okay, this happens to me all the time. I always miscalculate. So I'm short about quite a lot actually. So either this isn't 500 meters or I calculated wrong, which is entirely possible. So I'm going to supplement it with this dark blue. This is my Delicious DK in Nightshade, and it is the same wraps per inch as what's on the loom. Looks pretty though, right? Yay! So just gotta wind this up. All right, so we have a full warp. And it's just so satisfying. So the color actually matched really quite well. So it's a little bit, my nightshade is actually a little bit more violet-y, but it kind of, I think it fades really well. I don't think it's too much of a, I think it's going to work. I think it looks really, really good. So that is my warp. Oh, it's so beautiful. So again, this was Billiam Yarns, and in the one of a kind, they're all one of a kinds, I think. But this was in there. It's just such a perfect gradient. Oh, yeah, baby. So I've got approximately 4 meters with a few extra little, I'd say with about 20 centimeters either side of wastage that I can afford, 10 centimeters front and back. Now, what I'm hopefully going to do is, this is tied on really tight, so I can actually weave up until this point, so that's great. And then the other side tends to have quite a lot more, so we'll see how we go on that. So in order to wind on my warp onto this loom, I need to prepare the paper that separates the different layers that all wind onto the one loom, because I've got 4 meters on this loom. So I've got 2 bags that I've opened up, just plain old paper bags, and I've cut to the right size to fit the loom, so 16 inches. So in order to do that, it's very simple. I'm going to get this pharmacy bag. Just going to open it up. All about recycling. Take off the handles. Try not to break the actual paper, because it can cause some warping and tension problems later. Okay, and then there's normally a side where it connects, where it's glued together, so you just, that comes apart very easily. You can either cut it or just rip it. Sorry, my cat just attacked my leg. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why? Oh, she's so small. Kitten smells. Right. Come ça. Now, just going to measure on my loom. Actually, that works perfectly across there. So I don't need to cut it to size at all. So that's great. That's one of them. It might be a little bit small, this one, but we'll see. There's a kitten in this one. There's a tail. There's a tail. Great. This one is the right size as well. Fantastic. Great. So, all these crinkles, I mean, it would be great if it was flat, but all the crinkles will actually flatten out once the tension is applied. So, how do we wind on this this loom? I'm going to introduce the paper underneath here, underneath this side here, underneath the apron rod. This is the apron rod that these are tied to. You can see this. This is the apron rod just here. I have it attached to the heddle, just to hold the heddle in place, because this moves, with 2 rubber bands. Very simple. And so that is going to kind of roll in underneath, and it's going to kind of keep rolling in underneath. So that's how I'm going to introduce that. I'm going to get my warp and pull it back. So I've made a simple crochet chain out of the warp just to keep them all together. Cat fell off the... Did you fall off? Yes. Okay. So my mission now is I'm going to clamp this down again. Yeah, that's not going to move anywhere. So when I apply tension here, it's going to stay in the right place. Now I would actually like another clamp down this side, but I don't really have that ability. I'd like a table just the width of this. Actually, a stand would be good, but I'm too cheap to buy a stand, so there we are. So I'm just going to undo this once I've got a grip of it, you know. What I actually am going to do as well, I'm actually going to loosen this and put this down. So this was in the neutral clamp. You can see there's 3 sections for it to go: top, middle, and then underneath the bottom. So I'm going to move this down underneath. Yeah, just like that. Comme ci, comme ça. And that just, it lessens the risk of the whole thing flying off while I'm actually trying to warp it. So what I'm doing is I'm just rolling this through, and the heddle is actually acting as a comb to comb the warp out. Alright. This starts becoming a tiny bit fiddly. So you can use either just your fingers, or you can get a wide tooth comb and you can actually comb it back as well. But I find that the fingers is more than effective. Oh, see what I mean? So just to remember to kind of, when it's that way, kind of just keep it like that. When it's winding on, make sure that the paper is flat as it goes. This is kind of probably the finickiest bit. You need to make sure your tension is right. There we go. Just as I'm going, the edges they can fall off if your paper doesn't reach all the way to the edge. So I'm just going to get these little cardboard spacers that comes with the loom and pop them right to the edge. Just every so often, maybe every round you can do that. So what we do now is we flip the loom around, and we currently have 2 threads in each slot, and we need to push, so all of the threads fall to the bottom of the heddle when you pull it. We need to put every second thread through one of these holes, so that when we pull this down, you actually get half the threads held up into these holes and half of the threads fall down. And the opposite is true. When you pull it up, you should have half the threads up and half the threads still in the holes. So that's the next step. And I need to go for a little walk now because I've been sitting for too long. So that's my next plan. So here we are, ready to go. And so I'm just making sure that this is all nice and tight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one of these bad boys. Just there. Now what often happens at this stage is that it's not wound on as tightly as it could be. So I'm just making sure that the edges are good. I'm just gonna give it another, see, nothing's slipping, but it is tightening there now. Yeah, that's it. There we go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I have all of these loops here and I need to cut them. And my little loop has actually come undone. So I'm just going to create the loop again. Just by separating them out. My little tie that I had tied to keep them separate kind of came apart in my hand there, but that's fine. One that's not quite. So I'm just getting a scissors and I'm just cutting it. Ooh, this is the scary bit because you can't go back from this. Well, it's definitely going to be woven now. So there you go. That is, actually this will be handy. This would actually be quite handy. Let's see if I can do this. I just need one in here. Little experiment now. So I just need one thread at the bottom. Right, great. Okay, we'll see if this works. This might not work at all now, but where's my little... Oh, here it is. I got it. Okay, so with the threader, you've got a thick end, which is what I was using to pull through the slots. And then you've got this thinner end, and they're kind of like little crochet hooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread half of the threads through the holes and half of them are going to be left in the slots so that I can do the classic plain weave over under over under. That's what I fancy doing. That's what I'm going to do. This is actually a lot easier than what I used to do, which is individually pick them all out. But anyway, I'll put it on a time lapse so you don't have to be listening to my nonsense. Okay, I've got a couple of choices. So this is just my starter, so that's fine. So I've got some of this left, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to do the whole 4 meters. This is the weft that I used for my rainbow. It's Midwinter Yarns linen or Lithuanian linen. Now I do have plenty of this, and I think this would work really well with the colors. Ooh. I also have 2 of these, which I bought. They were going to be a top. I think I'd probably, if I was going to use this, I'd need to use this and then fade. Well, I kind of don't want to bother with that. So I've decided that I'm finally going to use this. Now, I bought this a long time ago, and I started doing a crochet thing on the plane at some point when my needles were taken off me in Bagan, I think, in Burma or Myanmar. So I started doing this, and then I never got back to it. So I'm going to rip this out, and it's now going to be a weft for this. I really wanted to use a lighter yarn and a thicker warp, just to see a little bit of a just a little bit of a difference. I want to like tightly pack it. Yeah, so you'll see a lot less of this color than this. This has been just sitting in my stash, wasting time. So it's going to be useful for a change. Yay! Back to Buffy.
And it really shows its true face.
Don't mock this. The night we spent together was important to me.
One date. It wasn't even a date. We just happened to be invited to the same massacre.